*130 hours remain. Izuku's eyes fluttered open, yawning as he hit the alarm off on his phone. He rolled over to stare into the beautiful sleeping face of his girlfriend, expecting to once again be amazed by her ever-growing beauty. Except when he had turned over, there was nothing but sheets and pillows there. Izuku blinked, pushing himself up he scratched the back of his head. Where was Ochako? Izuku shrugged and climbed out the bed, moving to the closet to put clothes on however he stopped. The moment he moved his head hurt. Izuku brought a hand to his head, which was pounding a dull pain. That was one way to start the day. Izuku moved, holding his head with one hand to put on a long-sleeve green shirt and blue jeans. Maybe she had already woke up before him and was downstairs. This wasn't the first time she had woken up before him. He stretched and left the room, making his way downstairs, expecting to see Ochako making herself breakfast. However, when he arrived downstairs, the brunette was nowhere to be seen. Izuku confusedly looked around. Where was Ochako? Izuku noticed that Hima was awake, sitting up on the couch. Good morning, Hima. Have you seen Ochako anywhere? Izuku asked. She couldn't have left the house, the snow was still piling up outside. Hima nodded. Izuku smiled. Maybe he had just missed her and she was somewhere in the house. Ochako said she was going to go stay with her parents for a bit. That's what she told me to tell you. Izuku furrowed his eyes. Why did she go stay with her parents? In the middle of the night. In the middle of a snowstorm. Without telling him. Hima. That doesn't make any sense. What do you mean she? Suddenly, Izuku heard steps behind him. He turned to see Bakugo walking down the stairs, Eri following behind him, rubbing the sleep out of her eyes. Nothing seemed odd about that. However, Bakugo seemed to be looking around, as if he were anticipating something. Ka-chan, is there something going on? Izuku asked seriously as Bakugo made it to the bottom of the stairs. Ochako said she went to stay with her parents. And that's my fucking business why? Bakugo asked, walking to the fridge. Izuku furrowed his eyes even further. Ka-chan, she left in the middle of the night. In a snowstorm. Izuku said loudly. You don't think that's strange? Of course it's strange, aren't you supposed to be a nerd? Bakugo said, taking a juice out of the fridge. Then why aren't you telling me what's going on? You think I know? Bakugo spit back, holding the juice and reaching into the fridge for a second time. Listen here, nerd. For someone who analyzes shit, you sure do know how to react before thinking. Maybe there's a fucking reason she hasn't told you anything. Why don't you actually think for a second? Izuku took a step back as Bakugo pulled another juice from the fridge, handing it to the tired Eri. Bakugo was right. Maybe this increasingly large headache was getting to him. Think. Ochako left in the middle of the night without saying anything to him. There has to be a reason for it, right? Ochako said she was staying with her parents. That was the message she left for him. Something would have to be pretty drastic for me to go back to my parents' house when I can stay here with you. Izuku's eyes grew wide. She didn't tell Hima to tell him that for no reason. That was a warning. Something big is going on, and it probably has to do with why they were here on this mountain. Knowing Izawa, she probably wasn't allowed to tell him anything. But she left a warning. Something drastic is going on. Izuku needed to stay on guard. Izuku bolted up the stairs, grabbing both the cases from the closet and opening them up. Ochako's hero costume was gone, and so was his face guard. Ochako was on hero work. But why couldn't he know anything? He was the target obviously, for one. And two, Eri and Hima are here. Eri is potentially still a target of the League of Villains. The question now was what was the mission? Izuku looked around in paranoia. Was it a false alarm? Was it a different kind of mission? Was he overthinking this? And what was going on with this stupidly painful migraine? Izuku quickly walked back down the stairs towards Bakugo. He had to talk to him. They needed a plan in case something happened. Ka-cha. Suddenly with a crash, the sidewall seemed to explode out of nowhere. Wood, winds, and snow blew into the living room as Izuku, Bakugo Eri, and Hima flew. Izuku landed back on the stairs as Bakugo slid onto his feet catching Eri and Hima, shielding them from the oncoming wooden shards. Izuku pushed himself to his feet, holding his head as the violently cold air whisked around him. Izuku opened one of his eyes to see what had happened. There, in the newly created opening in the wall, a man with dangerously pulsating veins on his forehead stood, a leather trench coat and greasy hair blowing. Huh. Wow, she really did amp me up, huh? This should be easy. Without any warning, Bakugo exploded into the air, flying his way towards the villain. I don't know who, but you died today, Grease Man. Bakugo said with an almost evil grin. What are you finna do, kid? The man said without any worry. I knocked you in the jaw last time we saw each other. I've never seen you before in my life. Bakugo yelled, throwing his right arm into the man's face, an oversized explosion going off. However, the man stood, unaffected by the blast just thrown at him, smoke rising from his jacket. Oi, the man said simply, grabbing Bakugo by the wrist. This is a new coat. Don, fuck with it. And with that the man threw Bakugo out the cabin, Bakugo flying at the speed of a bullet into a nearby mountainside a distance away. Ka-chan. Izuku screamed, his head still spinning from the breach. The guy said he had beaten Bakugo last time. He had specifically knocked Bakugo in the jaw. Izuku remembered coming home to find Bakugo on the couch. When he awoke he had been rubbing his jaw. And Ochako. When she woke up randomly she was rubbing her neck. Memories, no one could remember. Was he involved with Hima when she couldn't remember anything? Izuku got into a fighting stance. This man could somehow take away or block memories. But how was he so strong then? Did he have a second quirk? The strength could be confused with one for all if one didn't know better. It didn't matter. What does matter is he's potentially after Hima. The green energy coursed around Izuku. One for all, 20%. Yosuke turned to see Izuku, the green energy coursing around the boy. What kid? Not gonna attack me. Yosuke asked, tilting his head. Izuku smiled. I'm just waiting for the signal. Suddenly, with incredible speed, Bakugo was behind Yosuke again, an explosion sending even larger than the last sending Yosuke forward. Izuku jumped, directing a punch right for Yosuke's stomach. Detroit. Smash! Izuku shouted, sinking his fist into Yosuke's stomach, sending the man flying out the cabin. Izuku landed, and quickly turned his attention to the girls, now cowering in the corner of the room. Izuku clicked his tongue. The girls couldn't run, not in this snow. The only choice they had was to wait and hope the two in training heroes could win. Deku. We aren't done yet. Bakugo screamed as Yosuke had jumped, heading right for them. Stay here. Protect each other, alright. We will save you, don't worry. Izuku called out, turning his back to them and focusing his attention on the incoming threat. Ka-chan, Izuku yelled, jumping forward towards Bakugo. Bakugo grabbed Izuku's hand midair, using explosions to twirl them both, throwing Izuku with a final explosion towards Yosuke. Explode a catapult. Bakugo screamed as he chucked Izuku with a final explosion. Izuku launched forward, a streak of immense green energy coursing through the sky as Izuku prepared a kick for Yosuke. However, the burly pulsating man was ready. Yosuke raised his hand, the veins showing even through his leather coat as he tensed his arm. Izuku's foot collided with Yosuke's outstretched hand, winds from the impact blowing, green energy coursing around them both. Izuku used the same foot to push back off of Yosuke's hand, Bakugo shooting in right after causing another explosion in Yosuke's face. Izuku jumped from mountaintop to mountaintop until shooting down at Yosuke, striking his back with another 20% smash. Yosuke, not prepared for the sudden impact, slid a few feet. Izuku and Bakugo landed a few feet away from the villain, catching their breaths. Izuku winced. His head hopped. What do you want with us? What's your goal? Izuku yelled, one for all still coursing around him, his head still absolutely throbbing. Yosuke, seemingly unaffected, shook his shoulders as he shrugged. You would just forget if I actually told you. Should be obvious though. However, I am on a time limit here, so I guess I gotta get serious. Yosuke got into stance as he stared at the two students. He needed Izuku Midoriya, he needed to be knocked out. He also needed Hima. This Bakugo kid was being annoyingly in the way. He also needed to grab Eri. What a pain, carrying three people. With immense amplified speed, Yosuke raced forward, grabbing Izuku by the arm. Wah! Was the only thing Izuku could get out before being chucked back at the mountain house at a velocity even faster than when Bakugo was thrown. Izuku crashed through the walls of his and Ochako's bedroom. Yosuke turned his attention back to Bakugo, swinging once again with immense speed. Bakugo dodged the first punch, relying on his reflexes, however, reflexes could only get him so far. Bakugo took a strike to the head, collapsing into the snow beneath him. That should do it. Yosuke jumped high, landing in front of the cabin's hole he had originally busted open. He looked up the stairs where Izuku had landed from his throw. Midoriya wouldn't be out long with just that. Yosuke turned his attention to the girls, holding each other in the corner. Yosuke felt the room go wobbly, everything bending out of shape. He grabbed his head and held it. Oshagiri was affecting him with her quirk. Sorry girl. That's not gonna stop me this time. Yosuke said as he walked forward. Eri and Hima's eyes grew wide as the shadow of the man grew over them. It's time for you two to come with me. With two strikes, Eri and Hima were unconscious. Yosuke felt rumbling coming from upstairs. Midoriya was waking up, time to act. Yosuke quickly picked up the two girls, ran to the gaping hole, and jumped unrealistically high in the air towards the meeting place Sasagiri gave him. If things went right, Midoriya would be following right about. With a crash, Izuku jumped out of the house roofing and was flying his way towards Yosuke, double the energy coursing around him. Yosuke looked down to see the green energy flying at him, angry green eyes locked onto their target, with newly found white arm-length gloves on, chasing after him. Wait right there, Izuku screamed, kicking the air, forcing his body higher into the sky. One for all. 50%. Don't you dare take them. Yosuke smiled. Perfect. However, another sound could be heard chasing after him as well. I'll kill you. Yosuke frowned as he looked over a bit, seeing the blonde spiky hair chasing him down as well. Fine then. You want these to back. Yosuke called out. Fine. Here you go. Yosuke released his grip on the girls as he was still flying through the air. The unconscious girls fell, plummeting to the snowy earth. No! Izuku yelled. One for all. 100%. Izuku redirected himself, kicking the air with forces of air being blown into the sky, rocketing down toward the falling girls. Izuku shot past Bakugo who had started turning towards the girls, however, Izuku stopped him. I've got them. Go! Izuku yelled, passing Bakugo after the girls. Bakugo clenched his teeth, as he turned and rocketed upwards towards the still airborne Yosuke. Yosuke smiled. Good. I'm gonna murder you, Bakugo said as he confronted Yosuke. However, Yosuke held up a hand and snapped his fingers. Let's see how much you remember after this, blast boy. She didn't just amplify my strength and abilities. Suddenly a slivery misty sphere encased them. Bakugo felt his head go numb. What was happening? What was he doing here? Who was that in front of him? With that final thought, Bakugo was struck in the neck, completely knocked out, as he too started plummeting. Yosuke laughed as he too directed himself downward, kicking the air a bit to fall faster than Bakugo. As this was happening, Izuku flew downwards, catching the two girls in his arms, however, his legs were torn and flailing. He couldn't stop. Izuku turned his entire body holding Hima and Eri's unconscious bodies as he crashed into the snow beneath him. It felt as though his entire back shattered. But the snow cushioned his fall somewhat. The girls should be okay. Now, all Bakugo had to do was win. And he always wins. Izuku opened his eyes and looked up, his face turning to fear. He saw Bakugo falling out of the sky, and Yosuke firing right at him. Move body. Move. Yosuke landed with a crash next to Izuku in the snow, casually brushing himself off as he walked towards the broken boy holding the girls. Still awake after that? Wow, you are persistent ain't ya? Yosuke asked, the body of Bakugo crashing into the snow behind him. Well, that was easier than I thought, Yosuke said, looking down at Izuku who was trying his hardest to get up and defend the girls. Give it up, kid. You've lost. I can't carry all three of ya, and you went and broke your legs so I can't even trick you into following me now well. Guess I have to somewhat try and carry you three by myself. No, 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 Izuku yelled as he used his arms to force himself again into the air. Yosuke sighed. Really, kid? Yosuke asked as he massaged his neck. All right then, one for all. 50%. Izuku kicked with his broken legs towards the greasy-haired man punching the air, sending air blast after air blast at him. Izuku landed, forcing his way through the searing pain in his bent legs as he stood, firing repeated punch after punch, Air Force blast after Air Force blast. Yosuke held up both his arms, standing and resisting against the repeated air pressure being thrown his way. Izuku's angry eyes continued to rage, tears flowing down his face. He had to win. He had to protect. He had to do something. Anything. Anything to save them. Izuku felt it, the influence of one for all taking over. Izuku gave in. He had to try anything, anything to protect them. One for all. Controlled 75%. I must protect them. Izuku screamed as he jumped forward. Yosuke, for the first time, had a face of fear. He gritted his teeth and prepared for impact. This was dangerous. Izuku's fist connected with Yosuke's guarding arms, forcing the man to fly back. Yosuke slid against the snow into a tree. He tried to stand, but the boy, green kinetic energy escaping his eyes, was ready to pound him into oblivion. This wasn't good. Yosuke barely dodged the oncoming barrage of punches, jumping to the left. An explosion of snow rising from the impact of multiple pounds to the ground. Yosuke stood as the green energy came into focus through the falling snow and steam of evaporated snow from the sheer impact. Yosuke's face grew from fear to seriousness. Sorry, Asagiri. Looks like this is the only way to get the important one. Yosuke raised his hand, snapping his fingers. The silvery dome of mist appeared around him. Midoriya didn't look like he was thinking straight, his need to save overshadowing anything else. If he willingly ran into this, it was a victory. Protect them, protect them, protect them. Izuku mumbled, being affected by the will of one for all. Staring at the silvery dome around Yosuke. That had to be the memory erasure quirk. Izuku gritted his teeth. If he lost his memories, he couldn't win. If he did nothing, his body would collapse using one for all at this level. Izuku prepared himself. There was only one way. He had to rely on his instincts. It didn't matter if he forgot what was happening right here. Right now he just needed his body to react. He just needed his punch to finish. As long as he kept punching through the memory erasure, everyone would be safe. If that happened, it was a victory. The green energy continued to course around Izuku, Yosuke's eyes connecting with the green angry ones across the snowy field. Izuku crouched before shooting himself towards the silvery memory erasing barrier. Ah, air! He screamed. However, Yosuke smiled. You didn't think the barrier couldn't grow, could you? Yosuke snapped his fingers again, the memory mist growing larger, hitting Izuku well before Izuku was close enough to attack. However, Izuku pushed forward. I don't need to remember. I just need to move. Memories of today were leaving him. Move, punch. Memories of yesterday's haircut with Ochako. Move, punch. Meeting Ochako's parents. Move, punch. Izuku advanced, the pupils leaving his eyes, leaving nothing but green and one for all, taking over, moved forward. Move, punch. Meeting Hima. The battle with Gaslighter. Valentine's Day with Ochako. The day's training Eri without his quirk. Izuku and Ochako's first fight about one for all. Ochako meeting his parents. The concert where they shared a kiss. The tree branch he asked Ochako out on the date. The day he saved Eri. Training on the beach with Ochako. The day Ochako comforted him. Ochako, Ochako, Ochako. Who was Ochako? What was one for all? Yosuke's smile disappeared as the punch connected with his cheek. Forces of green energy came skyrocketing out of Izuku's cheek. The light left Izuku's eyes as his unconscious body collapsed into the snow, along with Yosuke's. Asterisk 125 hours remain. Yosuke woke with a dull pain in his jaw. He looked up at the sun. The snowstorm had stopped. This wasn't good. He was supposed to meet Asagiri soon. He looked down at the unconscious broken boy in front of him. Well, he had to lose at least half his memories. Asagiri would just have to deal with it. He picked up Izuku and threw him over his shoulder. He started walking towards the girls' bodies, grabbing them with his other arm. At least he was still amplified, but who knows for how much longer. Yosuke jumped into the air, continuing his journey through the sky towards the meeting point before hearing something behind him. He turned his head as he flew through the sky, looking for what that noise was. Oh, you gotta be shitting me. A group of people, a brown-haired girl, a red and white-haired and a spiky-haired boy, and a pink-haired girl were flying their way towards him at incredible speed as if gravity didn't affect them. Was fire trailing after them? Yosuke clicked his tongue. All right then. More fuckers I gotta beat the shit out of.